welcome to another painting video. In this video, I'll be converting and painting the cutest little tank in the 41st millennium, the Myphitic Blight-Hauler. There we go. I saw these cool conversions on Instagram where the tank has an open mouth and I wanted to make my own version. So, here it is. Let's see how I converted and painted this Blight-Hauler. So let's start and build ourselves a Blight-Hauler. I have here the kit and I printed some teeth. Well, these will come in handy, I'm quite sure. Link to the STL file is in the description. I also have this vomit bit from the Maggoth Lord kit, thanks to a buddy of mine who had a spare. I start with a normal assembly of the kit. Just follow the instructions. Build the body, the tracks, and the weapon rack as shown. Build the body until you end up with the face shield and tread covers. I'm going to snip off the tread covers to separate them from the face shield. Trim the cut edges. It doesn't have to look perfect. I mean, it's a Nurgle model, so any damage is free battle damage. I cut off the tabs on the inside and sand them down. This way the face shield will be able to get into an open position. And then I glue on the tread cover separately. I'm not happy with how the face shield sits at the open position, so I cut away a little bit of the shield so it fits more snugly. I glue on the shield and here we have an open-mouthed Blight-Hauler. The vomit bit will go somewhere in the middle. For sculpting, I really wanted to use Milliput, as normally this is much more manageable than green stuff. Unfortunately, my Milliput was very old and unusable, so green stuff it is. Even this stuff was almost impossible to work with, as it was pretty old as well. Now, I'm not a sculptor at all, so I'm sure a lot of people watching this will be able to do a much better job than I'm doing here. But I'm basically adding some green stuff on the roof of the mouth and the bottom. I flatten it as much as I can, and then with the sculpting tool try to add some texture by carving a groove in the middle and adding more grooves on the side. This will give a very rough looking inner mouth. I then made a couple of thin worms of green stuff and added these as gums to the edges of the mouth. This is where I will stick the teeth that I printed. To make it look like a weird monster, be sure to put some random teeth in weird angles. You don't want like a neat line of fangs. I want a hodgepodge of weird teeth jutting from all angles. Repeat this over the entire mouth. You'll end up with something like this. Although the sculpt is very rough, I do still like the look of it. I add the vomit bit in the middle and sturdy it up a little bit with some leftover green stuff. And here we have a converted Blight-Hauler. I'm very happy I got the teeth as I wasn't looking forward to sculpt those. If you don't have a 3D printer, maybe you can find some teeth in other kits, or maybe a toy that has some sculpted teeth in it you can use. Time to paint them up. I first primed the model black with some black primer from Vallejo. Then I spray Ushabti Bone over pretty much the entire model. I leave some dark shadows in the recesses. To brighten the model, I spray Vallejo Ivory on the model. You can also use Screaming Skull for this. For the brightest spots, I use Iyanden Grey. I'm going to dirty up the armor, so it's good to have it as bright as possible. The following painting steps will be very similar as my Plagueburst Crawler, but there will be some new steps as I'm painting the mouth and some more fleshy bits. To dirty up the armor, I use Streaking Grime. This enamel wash is really good and usually is the last step in the painting process, but I'm being stubborn and I'm using it at the start. With a little piece of foam, I dab away a lot of the streaking grime. I either dab or apply streaks. Do whatever feels right here. Gunk should accumulate at the bottom, so leave a lot of grime there. I repeat the previous process, but now I have some white spirit on the foam. This will remove more streaking grime, but also will make it a lot more watery. This will soak the foam so you can create some interesting splotches of grime on the armor where you see fit. After giving the streaking grime some time to set, I apply a wash of Mortarion Grime to give the armor a slight greenish hue. The Mortarion Grime is a lovely, subtle, dirty green that works very well on bone or white armor. Let's take a look at the metal and bronze next. All metal is painted with Iron Warriors. And bronze is painted with Hashut Copper. I shade both the metal and bronze with Agrax Earthshade. And highlight with Canoptek Alloy. I really like Iron Warriors as it looks nice and dark straight out of the pot. Lead Belcher for me is too light, especially if you want some dirty metal. Gun casings are painted with Incubi Darkness. I've done this throughout my army and it's a fun subtle spot color that works well to unify the army even more. I shade with Nuln Oil and give a rough highlight with Fenrisian Grey. Basically just stipple it as a layer. I talked about Dirty Down products quite a bit while working on my Death Guard. I apply Dirty Down Rust on all the metal. It looks great straight out of the pot. On the armor, I add Dirty Down Moss to give it that toxic green look. Of course, the fun thing about Dirty Down is that it reacts with water, so take a damp, clean brush and you can easily gradient the toxic green on the armor, removing any straight lines, which makes it look a little bit weird. Finally, I apply Dirty Down Verdigris on the bronze and remove with a damp brush where I don't want it. On to the good stuff. I base coat the entire lining of the mouth with Screamer Pink. And then I'm building up my fleshy layers. First I use Bugman's Glow. Then comes Cadian Fleshtone. I layer on, making sure the previous layers are still showing, which means all layers will become smaller and smaller. Next I paint with Kislev Flesh and highlight with Flayed One Flesh. I end with a wash of Athonian Camoshade, which will make the flesh look even more gross and diseased. That looks like the entire mouth is just rotting meat with teeth growing out of it, right? I love it. There are more fleshy bits on this model and I'll be painting those in a different shade. His sexy rear is base coated with Drakenhof Flesh. It's a great paint to start any dead or sickly skin. I shade the skin with Targor Raid Shade. Alternatively, you can use a more reddish wash if you want the skin to appear more alive. I layer on a mix of Drakenhof Flesh and Palace Witch Flesh. Make sure the deepest recesses are not painted. And then comes a highlight of Palace Witch Flesh. I end with washing certain small areas with Drakenhof Nightshade. If you are precise with your brush, you can try to draw some blue veins on the skin. This really adds to the sickly skin look. Let's paint some final details. Teeth are base coated with Ushabti Bone, shaded with Skeleton Horde, and highlighted with Screaming Skull. Any tubes I find are painted with Black Templar. and boils are painted with Iyanden Yellow contrast paint. I paint the lens with white paint, and then add Tesseract Glow as I do with all my Death Guard models. This is the model mostly finished. I also use this exact way of painting with my Bloat Drones, as they share a lot of aesthetics with the Blight-Hauler. For the stream of vomit, I'm going to try this new paint from the army painter called Oozing Vomit. Now, I will say this is pretty much their version of Nurgle's Rot, but there's a difference. The paint is very chunky and globby, which works really well for this type of special effect paint. Once dried, I do see more yellow tones than Nurgle's Rot would have. So, as a mini review, I would say this is actually an improvement on Nurgle's Rot. I want to make this vomit look more disgusting, so I paint all the little droplets and raised areas with Xandri dust. And then I do the same with Hobgrot Hide, which introduces some mustardy yellow on the vomit. The final highlight is with Kislev Flesh. Alternatively, you can use Dorn or Ice Yellow, but the fleshy highlight makes it a tad more disgusting in my opinion. And here we have a converted Myphitic Blight-Hauler. I really love the look of this little tank, and the conversion looks great if I say so myself. Even though my sculpting isn't really good, it does read as a disgusting mouth. Stay tuned for more Nurgle goodness with my next video, where I'll paint 2 alternative models for my Death Guard Chaos Spawn, which are 2 models from the Gellerpox Infected. In the meantime, be sure to check out my Instagram, where I'll post pictures of current projects and behind the scenes stuff. But for now, thanks for watching.